and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Be careful, be very careful what you wish for, my friends, because sometimes you get exactly what you want. And in many cases, most of us, we look at something and we say, you know, it would be really great if we had that. But we don't consider what it would take on the other side. Take, for example, I don't know, new vehicles. So you look at this great new vehicle. By the way, Ferrari's got one out that is just butt ugly. Have you seen their four-door?
Either EV.
EV, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a Ferrari. It's not supposed to look like crap. It's supposed to look awesome. But anyway, be careful what you wish for. You know, you buy a new vehicle, and then you have to buy insurance, and then you have to buy license plates for it. And then you have to buy fuel for it and a garage to put it in. See, many times we think about what things would be like if only we could control everything. And there is a large segment of the population that got exactly what they asked for. And we have for a very long time. As a historian, I will tell you that there has never been an election except for 2020 that came out wrong. Voters always get what they deserve, and voters always get what they want. Now, it doesn't say anything about the results of that, whether it's going to be good or bad for you. All I'm saying is that you get what you want. You get what you ask for in electoral politics. Take, for example, Barack Obama. He was the second coming. He was the first African-American to be president of the United States. Now, at the time, I heard a lot of people say, well, you know, I think it's about time that we had an African-American. And I didn't disagree. I just disagreed with the person that was running for office. You see, nobody looked into who Barack Obama was. Very few people actually read his book. I was one of those that did actually read his book and found out that he is not who he says he was. And anyway, he got elected overwhelmingly and then won re-election. And think about all of the things that he did. Now, when you look at what the Biden administration did after Trump was elected, well, that was far worse than Barack Obama. But my point is that you got exactly what you deserved. You know, one of my favorite things in the morning when I sit down to do show prep, and I don't know how I manage this, but one of the very first things that pops up on my YouTube feed is Rush Limbaugh. There's almost always, they're never in succession, but there's almost always a Rush Limbaugh episode up there. And this morning, usually I don't listen to very much of it, but this morning I did. And it was a good thing, too, because he was discussing Obama's speech in Kansas, where he said that the free market doesn't work, that it has never worked. Now, where have you heard something like that? From Josh Durrell at the Wyoming Business Council, of course. I'll get there in just a second, but let's play the Rush Limbaugh video clip.
As I promised yesterday, we have the audio sound bites from that speech. I've studied it. It's depressing. It's just depressing to actually have the most powerful man in the country aligned against it. To have the most powerful man in the country seeing this country through crosshairs. It is, well, I run the gamut of emotions. I mean, it's anger, frustration, sadness. It's just amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, this speech, if you take this speech, we've got the sound bites coming up, but I want to do a little analysis of it even before we get to it. And by the way, welcome. It's Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network. Here's the telephone number if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. Look, let me just give you a sample summary of Obama's speech yesterday. The President of the United States, not Fidel Castro, not Kim Jong-il, not Mao Zedong, not Lenin, not Stalin, not Gorbachev, not Saddam Hussein, not Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, not Hugo Chavez, but the President of the United States said that while a limited government that preserves free markets speaks to our rugged individualism as Americans, such a system doesn't work and has never worked. The President of the United States said that the United States of America, as founded, has never worked. Stop and think of that. Ponder that for a moment.
There is a certain crowd in Washington who, for the last few decades, have said, let's respond to this economic challenge with the same old tune. The market will take care of everything, they tell us. If we just cut more regulations and cut more taxes, especially for the wealthy, our economy will grow stronger. Sure, they say there will be winners and losers, but if the winners do really well, then jobs and prosperity will eventually trickle down to everybody else. And they argue, even if prosperity doesn't trickle down, well, that's the price of liberty. Now, it's a simple theory, and we have to admit, it's one that speaks to our rugged individualism and our healthy skepticism of too much government. That's in America's DNA. And that theory fits well on a bumper sticker. But here's the problem. It doesn't work. It has never worked.
Listen to the crowd. When the President of the United States says that the free market has never worked, that it doesn't work, it has never worked, you know that there is a profound realignment of our American values going on. Our capitalist system of free enterprise has created the most prosperous, the most powerful, the most charitable, the most free country that has ever existed on the face of the planet. And yet there are people who individually prosper from that free enterprise system that claim that it has never worked. Now, you may have thought that we've done away with Obama, now he's just relegated to Big Mike talking about him on her podcast. But my friends, that sort of thinking always continues. What about this soundbite? Uh-oh, hold on just a second. Dang, that was going to be so smooth when I played Mom Donnie. Just a second.
I'm ready whenever you have it there. We could hear it in the studio, but y'all couldn't hear it out there.
Here we go. How about this one?
But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it is the end goal of seizing the means of production. where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. And what I want to say is that it is critical that in the way that we organize, in the way that we set up our work and our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other, that we do not
leave one issue to the other, that we have to be unashamed about our socialism, the man says. And when campaigning, he says things like this.
Prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
That, my friends, is a terrifying idea. That there's no problem too big for government to solve and no concern too small for government to care about. In other words, that you are not capable, not entitled here, that you are completely unable to prosecute your life, that you don't have an equal opportunity to succeed in this country. Of course, all of that is rubbish, but we should pay attention when these people say those sorts of things. When somebody stands up on a stage and says the free market does not work, the free market has never worked, you should listen to them. When there are people that are that are highly paid, that are in positions of authority, that have the ability to hand out hundreds of millions of your dollars to other people other than you, and say things like, maybe
the free market as an ideal, unfortunately, it doesn't exist except at, maybe those ivory tower type institutions that we might call as in academia, and that's where it exists because it's a model. Now, mine happens to be a little longer term play than yours. However, you and I agree that it would be great if at a local level, our communities could do their own growth, that they could handle the ability to fund infrastructure and to make it so that they have streets and sidewalks and water lines. I think we both agree that that would be beautiful, and it would be awesome if the state didn't have to do that. And so that's really the problem we're solving as well, is that we have a community challenge and we have a population challenge. And we're trying to work on those two things, and those are at the end of the presentation that I provided. And those are big swings. They are indeed. It's not about having a super small government. It's having an appropriately sized government that's important. And for the problem that we're looking to solve, we're not appropriately sized. We are indeed too small.
We are indeed
And
too small.
that is the challenge that we face. And whether it's palatable to those of us that love the free market or not it's inconvenient indeed. But it's the problem that we face today.
Because the free market doesn't work, I guess he has to create a system himself.
That's what
job.
he said.
Yeah.
He has to create an economic system. The
I
problem,
believe it's our job to give opportunities to those people that want to stay in Wyoming, but don't see a future. Now, I don't believe it's our job to give them that. Let me restate that. I believe it's our job to develop a system, an economic system that will allow for those people to reach their potential here.
That's not some wacko pinko commie in New York, my friends. That's Josh Durrell in Wyoming. Josh Durrell makes $288,000 of your money every single year, $24,000 a month. It's not some pie-in-the-sky commie that's in New York, my friends. That same thinking is right here. Why do I bring this up? Because it is also those same group of people that think that they are above the law, that they can operate without the constraints of the laws that we've passed, that they can hide behind the veil of government secrecy, that they don't have to tell you what they're up to, what's going on. Here's why I bring this up. 2 days ago, I was scheduled to be on a call with the Wyoming Business Council about one of their stupid projects in Jackson. $2 million of your money going to a cosmetics company that already had products at Sephora. And I was told, because I was a member of the press, that I couldn't be on that call. That before that could happen, they had to talk to their comms team. The Wyoming Business Council does not get to decide where the press has access. Josh Durrell doesn't get to decide, and nobody else does. If these people, that is, the Wyoming Business Council, Josh Jarrell, and all of his people, if they indeed are the people that think that they can pick winners and losers, that they can do with what they please with your money, they don't have a right to hide from you. Now, will the rest of the Wyoming media report on it? Nope, they won't. But I will. Because I think that you deserve to know what your government is doing. And when the same sort of rhetoric that happens in far-flung places like New York City or the other left coast in California, when that sort of stuff shows up here, you deserve to know about it, my friends. And the only way that we can know that we can find out what these people are doing is if we have respect for the First Amendment, if we have respect for access of the press. Now, I wasn't asking for anything, anybody's personnel file or anything that would in any way be considered redactable. No, I was asking to be on a call to ask some questions about this stupid cosmetics company and the stupid deal that the Wyoming Business Council made with her. The point, my friends, is now you have a government that is denying the press access so they can hide behind, whatever curtain that they are, so that you don't know what they're doing with your money. I promise you, my friends, I'm going to get to the bottom of that. I don't care how long it takes or how loud I have to get. But the Wyoming Business Council does not get to deny access to the press. And yet, that is exactly what they've done. Now, I'm pretty sure there's one of Josh Jarrell's pals listening to this program, because I constantly get notes from some of them. But I'm telling you what, Josh, you should come back on this program and answer why the Wyoming Business Council is denying access to the press. Because it's absolutely
Josh,
outrageous.
do you think that one of the problems of the committee is they don't understand the infrastructure problem that we have? And basically the private sector doesn't have to put in the infrastructure because they can go to other states. And I think when listening to them today almost made me think of them as Neanderthals, because they're thinking that somebody's going to bring in this infrastructure and pay for this infrastructure and make it happen. And I think that's what we need to do, is provide the infrastructure so they have the opportunity to come in at the same cost here as they do in New York.
Yeah. You're too stupid to know what they're doing, so they shouldn't have to tell you. That you're too dumb to understand the economic system that they're creating, the opportunities that they're giving everybody, that they so magnanimously give to Wyoming citizens with their money, with your money, by the way. It's not their money. This is absolutely outrageous. And like I said, my friends, I promise you that I'll get to the bottom of this. But that's, the press issue, that's kind of ancillary to the main point. My main point, anyway, that we do have people in the state of Wyoming that absolutely think along the same lines as the radical Mamdani or the radical Barack Obama. They say the same things. And when are we going to start listening to what these radicals say? When are we going to start taking them at their word? I mean, if you say the same thing over and over and over, maybe we should believe you. Maybe we should pay attention when you put a post on social media that says that you, the Wyoming Business Council, is going to pick winners and losers. That you get to decide which business prospers and which one fails. How dare you? And how dare you try to block the press? Now, think that all of this is just pie in the sky rhetoric. Well, the people of New York should have paid attention to what Mamdani was saying, because now he's going to do it. Ken, play the video that is Mamdani. Let's see, what did I call it? Hold on here. He's seizing property. Can't remember what I titled it. Maybe if we can find it. There it is.
We will focus on the worst landlords in New York City. When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards.
Yeah, listen to the crowd. Take their property.
Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits,
Look at him smile.
or even the tenants themselves.
Yeah! Screw the people that own the building. Give it to the tenants. If you thought that all of that rhetoric was just him playing to his base to get elected, oh, my friends in New York, you were sorely mistaken. When will you take him at his word? When will you take the people that say the same things here in Wyoming? When will you take them at their word? Now, I doubt very seriously that any mayor or elected official is going to be able to take your property in Wyoming, simply because we're the most heavily armed citizenry in the country.
I don't. It's happening in Jackson.
Well, this is true. Wait, I'm wrong. What? No, I only made a mistake. But you're right, Ken. It is happening in Jackson. If you want, and there are other communities that are trying to do this, but if you want to build a mother-in-law shed on your property, maybe your mom-in-law comes to visit too often, and you just can't put up with her in the house.
Politically correct term is she shed.
Yeah, well, all right, whatever. You want to build a she shed, mother-in-law shed. Anyway, you want to build one of those because you just can't stand to be around your mother-in-law for that long. Well, in Jackson, you have to pay for the ability to build on your property. They're called housing mitigation fees because somehow if you build on your property, it reduces the available land for affordable housing. I mean, don't worry if you don't understand it, because the logic used by the communists in Teton County is I haven't figured it out yet, and I doubt that any one of them has either. But they still take your money.
It isn't logical. It's emotional. That's the issue.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It
all plays on that reaction that you just showed in that video. The crowd's reaction was all emotion. There's no rational thought to it. It's just reaction.
We're going to take your property, and we're going to give it to the tenants. Yay! But, my friends, this sort of thinking is everywhere. Let's see, we just talked about that one. How about this one? From the Washington Free Beacon. Michigan Senate candidate Mallory McMurrow says she's open to reparations for Black Americans. This country owes a huge debt. Now we're up to Michigan. But again, I just proved to you that this sort of thinking, that Wyoming is not immune from these radicals. Those same sort of people live here as they do in Michigan, as they do in New York, as they do in Arizona. And I quote, Michigan Democratic Senate candidate Mallory McMurrow said she's open to reparations for Black Americans, including debt forgiveness and home ownership forgiveness. McMurrow's comments came during a May 8th appearance on the Detroit in Black and White podcast, hosted by Detroit-based Democratic political operative Adolph. How can you be a Democrat? Well, wait a minute. The Democrats started the KKK, so I guess that sort of fits.
What's Barack's middle name?
Hussein, yes, indeed. Anyway, asked how she feels about reparations, McMurrow said the United States owes a huge debt to people who were stolen from their homes and shipped over to this country and turned into slaves, turned into property. Quote, "We've never fully made that right," McMurrow said. "I'm open to any ideas that make sure that every person in this country starts at the, listen to this, starts at the same starting line, whether it's investments in education, small business ownership, debt forgiveness, home ownership forgiveness." Now correct me if I'm wrong, but every single person in this country starts at the same starting line. In this country, you have an equal opportunity to succeed. Everyone does. And through our amazing system of free enterprise and capitalism, you have the ability, you could have the ability to succeed, but you definitely have the opportunity. Now, do you have a guarantee of equal outcomes? No. Because sometimes succeeding takes a heck of a lot of work, and there are some people who just don't want to put in the work. But for those people who want to start something and work on it and sacrifice and spend their money and spend their time, those people will be successful. Now, there's no guarantee about how successful you'll be. I mean, nobody tells you that you're going to be a multimillionaire or if you're going to have a couple $100,000 in the bank. But the point is, you have an opportunity to succeed. Does everybody have the same ability? No. The truth is, there are some people that are just not smart enough. to run a big business, or they're not able to, or they don't possess the skills. But that doesn't mean that they don't have an opportunity to succeed elsewhere, to become whatever they want. That's the beauty of this amazing country that we live in, that we have an unparalleled system of free enterprise that is the guarantee of freedom and liberty in this country. And until we start recognizing that Wyoming is not immune to these very lines of thinking, that people deserve something for nothing just by virtue of what color their skin is. As my partner in crime here says all the time, you're not responsible for with whom or where your parents copulated. You don't deserve something just by virtue of being born. You deserve what you work for. That's it. The only way that you're going to succeed is if you apply yourself and you work hard. You don't have a right to take the property or the money that somebody else earns. You are not entitled to the fruits of somebody else's labor.
And if you don't have the right to fail, you won't do it. Look at what happened when the Pilgrims first landed. To me, it's just a no-brainer. You take away the right to fail, you take away the right to succeed.
Absolutely. And the truth is, most business owners, most successful business owners that you've met, they've probably failed at least one time, maybe multiple times. They probably started a business, thought they had a great idea, and then it went belly up. But did they give up? No. They said, hey, I've got another idea. Let's try something else. Let's work harder at that one. And maybe they didn't succeed at that one, but perhaps the third time they did. The point is, and Ken, I think you're exactly right, that if you don't have the ability or the opportunity to fail, you don't have the opportunity to succeed. And there is no other place on this planet that you can make that happen, that you have that ability, that you have that opportunity, than right here. And it offends me to no end when I have to put up with people like Josh Durrell and the Wyoming Business Council. I mean, it just infuriates me. Well, there's going to be lots more on Josh Durrell and his, refusing access to the press. You thought I was irritated at you before, Josh? I'm ticked off now. Just wait. Back in a minute. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland.
France. Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Watch out, Josh Terrell. You pissed me off, my friend, and it is not going to stop. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics live on a Thursday. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for everything you do for this program.
Was the line from Tombstone. You tell them I'm coming and hell's coming with me.
I don't know about that. Well, it might feel like that because, I get a burr under my saddle and you never know. Ask Dan Zawanser. He really enjoyed all of my attention. Well, for the rest of the program, my friends, we've actually got a pretty interesting show for you. At the top of the hour, a new friend of mine, his name is David Faubion. I'm going to have to ask him how to pronounce his last name, but he works for Guns and Ammo magazine. And maybe you heard this story before, but he is the guy that rented a helicopter and flew himself, had the pilot fly him into a landlocked piece of BLM property so he could go hunting. And there's a big story about that. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but he's going to be joining us at the top of the hour. He's going to tell us that story, and we'll probably have a little bit of a debate about public lands. I talked with him a little bit yesterday. Should be pretty interesting, but he's going to be joining us at the 9 o'clock hour, and so make sure you stay tuned for that. Now, continuing on, and I should tell you about tomorrow's edition of the program, too. I'm going to interview Jimmy Skovgaard. He thinks that he's running for the U.S. Senate as Harriet Hageman. So we're going to interview him tomorrow on the program. He'll be on the show about 9 o'clock. We'll be in the original Cowboy State Politics studio tomorrow. Ken's got something he's got to go do. I don't know what it is. Campaign, knock on doors, put up signs. What is it that you do anyway?
Actually, I'm going to go to the White House.
Oh, okay. All right. Fine. Go. Whatever. Anyway, tomorrow in the original studio.
I didn't tell you which White House. You just made an assumption.
A White House, not the White House.
No, actually, we're a bunch of us from the Wyoming legislature are headed out to go to Washington, D.C. and visit the White House and anything else we can find that is not bolted down.
Ah, indeed.
So
maybe you can run into a socialist and, steal their means of production.
Oh, we don't have to go that far.
You don't have to look very hard.
We don't have to go that far to find socialists.
All right. From the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, the Wyoming Tribune. Oh, and I forgot to tell you about this. So, if you missed yesterday's podcast, there was a tremendous reaction to it. And I think I called it ranked choice or open primaries. And what the liberals are trying to do, and the redcoats, I guess they're all liberal, they're trying to create a system of open primaries. And this has been going on for quite a while. That's what this whole crossover voting thing is. And if you hadn't noticed, like every newspaper in the state assisted them. I mean, you could not pay for that amount of media coverage. Of course, they didn't come out and say, hey, if you're a Democrat, you should switch parties so you can infiltrate the Republican Party and elect the most liberal candidate humanly possible. They didn't say that. What they did say was, you have until May 13th to change your party affiliation, make a difference in the primary. They always have to clutter it up with flowery sounding language.
Yeah, the Sheridan Press had notices and front page articles.
Every week.
Yes, constant.
Yep. And so really what they're up to is attempting to create an open primary. And what an open primary is, that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're all in the same primary. And it's and California kind of has this sort of system. They call it a jungle primary, but political primaries that they don't exist in Colorado or in California. And the reason for that is to make sure or to attempt to minimize the effect that one party has. And it's almost always the Republicans. You see any of these schemes, it's an attempt to prevent a conservative from getting elected. Now, the ranked choice part of it, that's a little bit different. Alaska has this, a couple of other states, but when you go to vote, you rank, here's my first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice. And through a series of iterations, what it creates is the most moderate candidate ends up winning. So it almost ensures that a conservative is not going to win the election. You could win the first round of voting, be number one, and still not get elected with ranked choice voting. Well, yesterday's podcast was a discussion about how, guess what? There's people, shocker, I know, there's people in Wyoming that that believe that very thing. Nancy Case is one of them. I mean, he's the guy that, well, it's not just Medicaid expansion, but every chance he gets, he talks about ranked choice voting. But he's not alone. Here's Senator Brian Bonehead Boner from Converse County. This is from a committee meeting in 2001 on Senate File 145, which was a runoff election bill. And we've tried to get a runoff election bill through the legislature a couple different times. But why not take a perfect, what more perfect opportunity could there be than to take a runoff election bill and switch it into ranked choice voting? Here's Bonehead. Listen to this.
The more I listen to all the concerns, to include the logistical concerns and the fiscal concerns like we just heard about, what's your thoughts on a ranked choice primary? If you're familiar with that, where everybody goes down and says, here's my number one choice, my number two, number three, number four. There's been some discussion of that in general, but you think that would alleviate these concerns without having the increased cost of the extra election?
Yeah. So there's Bonehead bringing up. And now in the same meeting, here's Nancy Case.
Mr. Chairman, I have a response for Senator Scott about the ranked choice primary. It was most recently put in Alaska, and it is used in Maine. I had understood that Washington, Oregon had a form of it, or Washington State did, but I guess that's just pending. It's used in a lot of municipal elections, lots of big municipalities.
Seems to know a lot about it, doesn't it?
And it's been used for Democratic caucuses in 4 states.
Oh, yeah.
So it definitely is gaining ground.
Here it comes.
I think it would be fun to look at whether it'd be cheaper to implement than a separate runoff and yet achieve the same results. The time might be right for it.
Oh!
It's really interesting that now they're concerned about the cost.
Yeah.
When it comes down to, who do we get the people, who do we get that the people want most into the office? And say you can't get into the office until you have at least half the people.
Mm-hmm.
That's too expensive.
Yeah, it's too expensive. Now remember, that was back in 2001, right? So none of these crazy ideas really ever die. And if you spend any amount of time in Cheyenne, when there's a good opportunity, a bill comes up that Nancy thinks that he can push one of these ideas through, he almost always tries. And I think, was it the last session, Ken, where you guys, did that bill pass to ban ranked choice voting? Do you remember? Because I know that there was a bill to do that.
Yeah, I remember there being a bill. I cannot say off the top of my head what became of it. I could probably look that up and try to figure it out. I'm guessing it probably never got brought to the table.
Surprise. I remember the bill
before it got there.
I can't remember.
Let me look and see if I can find that.
Good luck with that. Well, while you're doing that, so I've been told that I don't explain why these people have nicknames enough. So yesterday we kind of played this soundbite for you, but I didn't have the Nancy Pelosi soundbite with it. So just because we can, listen to this one.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
What a classic. And it sounds suspiciously like this one.
This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even start to figure it out until we pass this bill.
See? We have to pass the bill before we can find out what's in it. You see, we do have radicals in this state, and they do masquerade as Republicans. Cale Case is right now running for his Senate seat as a Republican. Notice you're not going to find anywhere in the Wyoming media that actually says he is a Republican. That would be, it would be slander to suggest that Nancy Case actually is a Republican. But my friends, there are these wackos running around. And when are we going to start taking them at their word? Let me give you another example. Lawsuit alleges that Laramie County's ICE partnership is unlawful. From the Turkey Vulture. The American Civil Liberties Union of Wyoming, along with 3 local organizations, has filed a lawsuit against the Laramie County Sheriff, Brian Kozak, who, by the way, is, Brian, are you still investigating checks, or have you forgot about that, or have you announced another investigation on Facebook? I mean, inquiring minds want to know, Sheriff Kozak. I mean, is that normally how you do that? Or did you just use that as an election ploy? Look at me, I'm going after corruption. Except, of course, the corruption I'm looking at is a constitutionally protected expression of free speech. I don't know. Anyway, Sheriff Kozak, he's getting sued. The legal challenge alleges that the sheriff exceeded his statutory authority by unilaterally entering into 3 agreements with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement outside of the proper legal processes. The lawsuit centers on Kozak's decision to enroll the county in 3 models of the 287G program, which effectively deputized local law enforcement to perform federal immigration duties. The ACLU argues that by bypassing the Laramie County commissioners and the public process, Kozak violated state laws designed to ensure democratic oversight and the separation of powers. The local organizations, a church, a barbershop, and a nonprofit advocacy group, claim they have all suffered as a result of Kozak's decision and would have opposed the move had there been public input allowed prior to the partnership with ICE. So why is it that organizations, and again, in Wyoming, my friends, why is it that organizations in Wyoming are opposing this ICE partnership? Because they're in favor of illegal immigration, of course. And I don't know what a barbershop has to do with this, or I can kind of see the church. The Catholic Church has been, pretty pro open borders for a really long time, but I don't know what a barbershop has to do with it. But there are people in this country that thinks just by virtue of you being here that you are entitled to a full complement of constitutional rights, and that's just not true. Constitutional rights are for citizens, not illegal aliens. If you want constitutional rights, okay. So there are some rights that you have as a prisoner, but there's not very many, right? You don't have the full protection of the Constitution just because you're not a citizen. And if you want protection of the Constitution, well, then you should probably become a citizen. But there's these same groups in Wyoming.
A soldier doesn't have constitutional rights. You know that?
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're subjected to the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and you have a lesser batch of rights than the actual citizen.
Now it was prisoners. So if you're in jail for some reason, you don't have a full complement of your constitutional rights. There's some things that you just can't do. So this lawsuit against Kozak, the article goes on. In the first allegation, the plaintiffs assert that under Wyoming law, the power to enter into contracts on behalf of the county belongs to the Board of County Commissioners, not the sheriff. I don't know that that's necessarily true, because in the Senate File 102, which is Wyoming's SAPL law, it specifically says in the law that nothing in there prevents law enforcement from joining into a task force with federal agencies. That happens all the time. And it's usually related to drug investigations or gang investigations. The federal government, the FBI or the ATF, they'll come in and they'll say, hey, we're investigating Pendergraft for having, too many firearms. And so we need your help. And so local law enforcement will partner with federal law enforcement to do that investigation. So that happens all the time. And I don't know that this partnering with ICE is any different. Let's see here. Several Laramie County commissioners were contacted for this story. While only Troy Thompson was reached before publication time, he declined to comment on this legal matter. Probably wise. Let's see here. So yeah, I mean, there are these radicals still exist in Wyoming, and to think that they don't, you're kind of off your rocker. All right, so here's kind of a weird story. Another one, and this whole episode today kind of has the same theme, and it's it's bypassing the law, giving special privileges to people that don't necessarily need them. Now, this one I find particularly offensive. It's about Major League Baseball. From the Daily Caller. Washington Nationals executive admits he discriminates against Christian players, tracks fans, and has a communist agenda. See, there are no corners of our world that are immune from radical politics. And part of the reason for that is there have been, we have the Supreme Court that, invariably strikes down different attempts of these radical groups. For example, the racial gerrymandering. By the way, I consider the Democrat Party a radical organization too. So the Supreme Court will rule on a topic. Well, then you can't, groups get together, and they're almost always on the fringes of the left. LGBTQ, ZXP, WDS, communist organizations, which I would argue that those two groups are together. Illegal immigration organizations, these folks that run around with Palestinian flags, those types of people. But they operate on the fringes, I think, of politics. And they'll when they can't legally do what they're trying to do, well, they find a way around it. Now, this radical, who happens to work for the Washington Nationals baseball team, he's decided, and evidently there's a group inside the Nationals organization that makes this happen, and it was exposed by James O'Keefe and Alex Stein. So, Ken, go ahead and play the video. Nationals baseball. This is pretty shocking. Watch this.
I am on the community relations team, so corporate social responsibility.
The director of community relations for the Washington Nationals of the MLB reveals unethical behavior within the management of the Washington baseball team, including religious discrimination against a starting pitcher.
One of our pitchers, dude, Trevor Williams, he is very Catholic. The Dodgers had a group out to the stadium who were drag queens who sometimes dressed up as nuns. He went on a social media this is wrong, this is my religion, you all are mocking it. Because of that, we don't use him on social. When they're is a hot dog a sandwich? And the players come up, you know what I mean? We don't ask him.
Potentially a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Sean then also reveals the Nationals Park is executing a surveillance strategy on Washington Nationals fans.
If you ever come to a Nats game, there is someone on our team who is responsible for figuring out everything about you. We're getting the plethora of your Google history.
And claiming they're, quote, using baseball to make money by selling out to Palantir-like defense contractors.
We're trying to use baseball to make money. And a lot of that is defense contractors, the Palantirs of the world.
Then he goes on to claim that some corporate meetings are segregated as women only or gay only.
They would be well within their rights to say if you don't identify as a member of the LGBTQIA plus population, you shouldn't be at this specific meeting. There are some spaces that should only be for those people.
And even discloses that he has a secret agenda to promote communism to Nationals fans.
There is a join the Communist Party poster up in my kitchen. I would love to find ways to every home run is a $100 donation. That's communism, you know what I mean? That's redistributing someone's wealth. And a lot of people will tell you, when I come to a baseball game, I don't want to think about that shit. If you're a sports fan and we piss you off, where else are you going to go? Either way, I don't give a shit.
Wow. Major League Baseball. Surveilling everything about their fans, trying to make sure that you're indoctrinated into their way of thinking. You see, this is one of the reasons why I became a Texas Rangers fan, because we went to a Rangers game, and I think I've told you this story, but and how we figured it out. We walked up to the beer stand, and I said I'd like 2 fake beers, and the gal at the stand handed me 2 Bud Zeros, and it was right in the middle of all this Bud Light stuff. And I think I snarled a little bit, Bud Light. And she goes, look, this is Texas Rangers Stadium. We don't do politics. Do you want the beer or not? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'll take it. And there was not a pride flag to be found. There was no political bull crap in the stadium. We just had a blast, even though the Rangers lost. It was we sat there for 13 innings, which is a long baseball game if you're not a baseball fan. But anyway, there was no politics. But it seems that except for the Texas Rangers, politics and radical politics infiltrates just about every part of our society. And part of the reason is there are legal blocks, legal barricades for what a lot of these groups want to do. And so, like you just heard in the video segment, is these radical groups, they have to go around the the system and find new and inventive ways to indoctrinate you. And one of the more shocking parts of that video for me anyway is that they're surveilling their fans and finding out everything they can about them. And of course they have to, and I'm sure that they're using geofencing, and it's the same thing when you talk about something to your friends and then you look at your Facebook feed and there's an ad that pops up. Yeah, your phone is listening to you. So I'm sure that in that stadium they're just collecting the Google data from that area. I'm sure that's what's going on, but there's certainly no privacy there, and you can tell that the Washington Nationals agenda, or at least that guy's agenda, it doesn't really have anything to do with baseball. Is to use baseball to push a political movement.
I don't think the Washington Nationals are unique in this.
No, I don't think they are.
I think if we knew the extent of this kind of crap that's going on, we'd probably want to just become hermits.
Probably. Well, and okay, so I don't know, like nothing's really private on the internet. You get on the internet, your search history, your IP address, a lot of the data that comes with your phone. I mean, that's not private, privileged information.
Yeah, your phone tracks you, your vehicles tracks you. Everything is out there.
Right. And so, if you go onto a website and you see the little website counter that's click, 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 click. Now there's 2 types of them. One, it just counts how many times the page is loaded. But another one, the only way to do this, to find unique visitors to your website, which is a pretty important piece of information. It tells you how many individual people are accessing your website. The only way to track that is with an IP address. And so the website logs individual IP addresses. Well, your IP address is right here. Okay, it's your specific device, whether it's your phone or your laptop or your home computer or your iPad. All of them have an IP address. And so just about every website you go to, that IP address gets tracked. And so I'm sure in that baseball stadium, they're just collecting that data from Google. Okay, what searches are being done while people are inside that stadium? Because I don't know if you've watched a baseball game, there's a lot of downtime. And so, if you're sitting in the stands, you'll look around and you'll see people on their phones. Well, I'm sure they're just collecting that data.
You can try an experiment. Go on Facebook and just scroll through your news feed and then pause at various things.
Yep.
And the more you do that, the more you'll see those things.
Yep. It's all data. And I mean, it's, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before on the program, but it's not unlike the NSA surveillance program that was authorized through the Patriot Act, or that they used the Patriot Act for. I shouldn't say that it was authorized. But the NSA wasn't recording phone calls. They were tracking metadata. So that is the time you made the call, the phone number you called, the length of the call, where you were when you made the call, and then on the other end, the person who received the call, what was their device doing? And if you have all that data, then you don't really need to know what the content of the call was. You can derive all of that. And so data, when the guy says we're making money off of baseball, that's what he's talking about, is the data that they collect is then sold to, he said, defense contractors, and I'm sure there's a slew of others. And so that amount of data, no matter where you collect it, it's super valuable to companies. So anyway, my friends, pretty shocking if you ask me. That's one more reason why I'm not a Nationals fan, and I can't stand them. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and take our second break, and when we come back, my new pal David's going to join us, and we're going to talk a little public lands and elk hunting and helicopters and all that sort of thing. And so we'll be back in a few minutes.
Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Joining me now in the studio is my new pal, David. And you have to forgive me, David, how do you pronounce your last name? Faubion. You got his mic hot enough, Ken?
We're getting there.
All right. So, David Faubion, you work for Guns and Ammo magazine, right?
I do, yep.
All right. Why don't you take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself?
Yeah. I moved to Wyoming in 2020 with my new wife.
Middle of COVID?
Yeah. I mean, hard to say middle of COVID because that was a long, miserable stretch for so many people.
It was.
But yeah, we moved here in 2020, and I've got 2 kids now, and besides my family, my joy in life is hunting.
Awesome.
And that's why we're here.
Well, I mean, I think that I definitely know that you're not alone. I mean, one of the big advantages to living here is it's an amazing state with I don't know that there's another state that has as many species of wildlife that we do.
Yeah, it's incredible diversity. You got plenty of animals you can chase, but the real beauty that separates a state like Wyoming from another freedom-loving state like Texas is the amount of public land you have. I think Texas has something like 0.5% public land.
Yeah, not here. It's like 46%.
It's close to 50. And if you got money down in Texas, you can do amazing things. But the nice thing about Western states, you don't have to be rich to go hunting. That's the beauty of it. Public land, access for all.
Yeah, I took a job in Virginia back in the, I guess it was like early 2000s, and there is no public land there. And so, if you want to go hunting, you got to know somebody, or you got to pay somebody. And so, I didn't do any hunting while I was there because I'm kind of a poor guy. So you've got an interesting story. So you decided to rent a helicopter and fly into a chunk of BLM property. BLM, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So why don't you just tell my audience that story?
Well, I got to back up. So when I moved out here, I was so excited for the public land, and I got OnX apps, which gives you a real time view of who owns what's public, what's accessible, and I was blown away by how many acres of public land, whether it's state trust or whether it's BLM, that was landlocked. You cannot get there. And so I asked around. I spoke to people who've been here for generations, and they all said the same thing. They said the only way you can get in there is to fly. I said, "Have you done that?" And I talked to so many people, and people in different states. The most hardcore hunters I know, no one had done it. So I started making phone calls, and long story short, I called 26 air operators throughout Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, and there was exactly one person who would fly me in. So in the fall of 2024, we did our first fly-in hunt, and it was a smashing success.
Okay, so did you? It was elk. What were you going after?
Yeah, elk and mule deer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have any antelope on that one, but it was an interesting thing. We parked on vehicle accessible BLM, and we met the helicopter there, and we're planning on flying 4 miles across this river to go and hunt. And we knew we'd be found. It's not a question of if, it's just a matter of when. And a lot of the people that I talk to and trust, they discouraged us from doing this because they said these ranchers are very possessive of this public land. And I said, well, sure, yeah. They've had basically sole access to it for generations in many cases. They're not going to like us there, but again, it's public land. There's nothing they can do. So we drove to the meeting place, and the helicopter came and landed, and the surrounding landowners met us before we even took off to get into the piece of public land. Yeah, and the lady, she wasn't mean, but she was bewildered. She was perplexed, and she kept asking tons of questions. And finally, when I told her what we were doing, she immediately changed. Her face went white. She took a photo of the helicopter tail number and made a phone call. Off she went. So 5 minutes later, as I'm in the helicopter going in for the first drop, this four-wheeler shows up with a big rancher, duster, big cowboy hat, and he came up and he circled around our helicopter without saying anything. And he had this big smile on his face. It looked like a villain in a Western. And he came around, and the helicopter wasn't running yet, and the windows were down because it was hot in October. And he said, "Good luck. We'll be seeing you soon."
Whoa!
That's the only interactions I had with him.
So I have a question.
Okay.
You said you had the software technology that told you what land was public, what land was private, and all that is current, and that's good. Did it also include anything about leases? Because I'm just curious about these properties that you were accessing, if those ranchers around there had an active lease on the same.
OnX, I'm not aware of any feature on OnX that allows you to tell the grazing leases, but I do know where to find that on the state website. I've seen it there, but no, there's nothing on OnX that I've seen that shows that.
And I'm not aware of any law that prevents you from hunting on a piece of public land, even if it is leased for grazing. I told you yesterday about that chunk of state land that's up by our cabin. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's fenced off, which, we can argue about that later, but, you can shoot an elk right on it, and there's not a darn thing, the guy that has the lease can do about it. So, I guess there could be a question of livestock if,
Sure,
there's 1,000 head of cows out on it, that might be a different story. So what happens after the four-wheeler guy showed up?
Well, I will say that he succeeded. He put the fear of God in me. He really did. Because when he said, "We'll be seeing you soon,"
Was he armed?
I couldn't tell if he had a sidearm, but he didn't have a long gun, nor was I worried about him using it. At that point, I still thought this is never going to come to anything serious. But anyways, we got dropped off, and it was a unique feeling because here my buddy and we're dropped off in this. I think it was something like 20 or 25,000 contiguous acres of BLM, and there's state land interspersed there, but surrounded by one landowner. And so here we get dropped off in this Shangri-La of public land hunting. And I'm imagining trophy animals running around every sagebrush, every draw. Anyways, the helicopter offloads us in seconds. We get our gear out, and all of a sudden he takes off. It was such a strange feeling. It was like we were trapped on a deserted island with hostiles having access to it. It was a strange feeling. So we were there, and we quickly hurried and got our stuff hidden in case anyone came around and wanted to pick a fight with us. But the helicopter went back and picked up the next group. It was my friend and his son. And they got dropped off probably miles from where we were at. We could barely see the helicopter. But sure enough, they got dropped off. And within minutes, that rancher on the four-wheeler came up and talked to them as well. He found them. He wasn't joking. He found them. And nothing bad came. He was in disbelief that it had come to this, he said. And he did not like it at all. But I think he was smart enough to realize there's nothing he could do.
Okay, now, had you contacted this landowner ahead of time? Had you asked him, hey, could we drive across your property and go hunt here?
No, and I would have done that. But everyone I talked to said trespass fees just aren't a thing. They said you can ask for trespass fees, but they're not going to give it. And in hindsight, we did ask the guy because we've hunted that place a couple times now, and every time we get picked up and dropped off from the vehicle accessible public land, he is there. And he will be monitoring the situation. And so my buddy actually asked him. He said, hey, instead of us flying in, why don't you give us a trespass fee? And he laughed at that. He said, we don't do trespass fees.
Wow.
So there is one way to get in there.
Okay.
Unless you want to pay for an outfitted hunt, there's one way to get in there, and that's do what we did.
Okay. So you get dropped off and you went and hunted. I mean, did you shoot any animals or?
Yeah. It was a good hunt for elk. I got my bull the first day, and it was a proof of concept. It showed that this plan really worked. It wasn't a monster bull, but it was a very beautiful bull.
It was a bigger bull than any one I've ever shot.
It's a good bull I got in 2024. But again, it was more of a proof of concept. And my buddy shot a nice mule deer, the biggest mule deer I've seen in years in Wyoming. But that was the only mature buck. I'd say more important than the quality of hunt, it was an incredible adventure. It makes you feel like the Robin Hood of the hunting world.
Okay.
You're not necessarily stealing because we all have equal ownership. Everyone in this room, everyone listening to this, we all have equal ownership to this federal land. It's all of ours. They just have a lot easier way to access it because they can drive right across with any of their vehicles.
Well, and 25,000 acres, I mean, that's a big piece of property.
Huge.
I mean, we, like our mountain property, we only have 81 acres. And I mean, okay, so it's a little small chunk of property, but it'll take you, I don't know, 3-4 hours to hunt it, you know, if you're going slow.
Sure, yeah.
And, you know, we've shot several elk on it, but 25,000?
Yeah.
That's a big piece of property.
That's a big chunk.
All right, so you go shoot an elk. What happened next?
That was the extent of the excitement on that one. We didn't have any more issues with the landowner, but next year we have had the year after that. So 2025 was the second year we did this, and in order to reduce the cost so it would be palatable to each person, I tried to get as many people as possible to go on this.
So what was the cost on this? Not to interrupt you, but
the first hunt, I think it was grand total of right around $7,000 for airfare. And again, the flight into the land itself when we're on board or our game is on board, that's nothing. It's literally probably a grand total of 1 hour of total runtime.
Okay.
But the problem is this helicopter operator, Tony Chambers of Wind River Air, he's located over in the Jackson area. So he's got a multi-hour flight to get here and then a multi-hour flight to get home. So that's where the costs come in.
Okay. All right. So continue. You go out second time around.
Second time, yes. We knew that now we knew that there'd be confrontations. But again, still didn't think anything serious would come of it. Well, my buddies got dropped off on some BLM up in the Bighorns, and it just happened to be the perfect timing. There's two of them got dropped off on this road, and according to everyone I've talked to, the state lands people, the BLM people, you can land on an existing road. It doesn't matter what vehicle you have; they treat it all the same. So if you land on a road, you're good to go. So they land on this remote road up there, just as a ranch hand was going by in a side by side. That guy lost it. My buddy said he was worried the guy was gonna punch him. It was gonna come to blows. He said his fists were clenched. He had spit coming out the corner of his mouth, and he threatened him every way he could. And they said, "There's nothing you can do. We're on public land."
Right.
Nothing else happened to that. Now, the most noteworthy one, the reason we're here, is because in November we did an elk hunt, also in the Bighorns, and that was a unique situation. On the second day, my buddy and I doubled on elk in this piece of state trust land, and so the next morning we showed up to start packing it. And my friend and I from Buffalo, he and I were there first, and we were going to start packing before the other guys met us. And early in that morning, we heard some shots over in the vicinity of where we were hunting the day before, maybe a mile away. And so we knew there was another hunter in there. No big deal. It's public land. There's ranch. A lot of people could be in there. And so we got over to the kill site and we sat down to take a breather because it was probably a 45-minute hike. And my buddy said, "I wonder where that other hunter's at." And just perfectly on cue, he looks down in the basin, probably 200 yards below us, and he sees a hunter walking with an elk draped over his shoulders. And I throw my binoculars up, and I look and I think, wow, what are the odds of an outfitter or the rancher shooting a bull in the same little basin we were at? It must be a great area, right?
Right.
And my buddy said, "Hey, let me see your binoculars." He left his at camp. And so I handed my binoculars just before the guy gets in the brush line. And he says to me, "I think that's our other bull." And I think to myself, no way. What he's implying is our elk head just got stolen. And if it was stolen, it was by a rancher, because there's no one else that went to the great lengths to get into this public land that we did. And so he goes, "Wait here, keep an eye on this brush."
Just curious question, was he wearing orange?
No, he was not wearing any kind of hunter attire. Okay. He was wearing ranching attire. I couldn't tell too many details, but it looked to me like a rancher. And so he runs back 100 yards to the other kill site, and he said, "If that bull is not there, I'm going to yell at you. We got to go confront him. We got to get our buddy's bull back." And I'm still thinking there's no chance.
Right.
And so he runs over there, and a few minutes go by, and all of a sudden, I hear the sound that I'll never forget. He yells at me. He says, "David, go after him.
Whoa.
He took our bull." Oh my gosh. It's a fun hunt up until this point.
I'm sure.
And I'm not more fearful than the average person. But if you've caught someone in the act of theft, and they're hidden in a brush line, and you got to go confront them to take this stolen property back, that is not a good feeling.
No.
That's not a good situation to be in. So sure enough, we go down there, and my buddy gets there first, and I was okay with that. And I'm watching him as he approaches that brush line, and I'm not fully expecting it, but it's not outside the realm of possibilities for him to get shot right there. And so I'm thinking to myself, is this even worth it? Is an elk head even worth it? I'm starting to second guess all my decisions up to this point.
Right, examining your life choices.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, out from the brush line steps this gentleman, older gentleman, and he's got no elk horns there. And my buddy speaks very sharply to him. "Why'd you take our elk?" And the guy denied it. I get up there, and one thing I've told all these people that I brought in on these hunts, all my friends, my dad, his buddy, people from the ages of 16 all the way up to 75. What I've told everyone is, if you have an interaction with people, film it. That'll keep them honest, and if something really bad does happen, at least we have evidence for it.
Sure.
Nothing we're doing is illegal. Nothing we're doing is trying to provoke the wrath of these people. I get it; they're upset. Okay, so we had our phones out, and we recorded the interaction, and it was a pretty big story, because here we are, public land hunters that go to great lengths to get into this landlocked public land. And the owner of this multi-million-dollar ranch stole our elk head to deter us from hunting in, quote, his outfit.
Right.
Or this outfit, I think he said. So that's what happened. And to get right down to it, my buddy knew the elk horns were right there. So we went in there. I jumped down in this ditch, and sure enough, hidden in this cut was our buddy Ryan's elk head. So I grabbed it, handed it to the rancher. and I took a photo of him handing it to my buddy.
Oh boy.
And that was critical evidence.
Wow. All right. So what? So where's the case now? I mean, is it in court? Did the guy get charged?
He was charged. Yeah. We didn't know what to do. It's a tough thing to do the right call at times, because we knew if we told the authorities on this, it would get big time news.
Oh yeah.
And we also knew that it would tell people where we were at. And we didn't want to ruin our spot. We didn't want to ruin that spot for anyone. You know, it's like fishing. Everyone can see if you're a successful fisherman because you can't really hide. When you're doing this hunting stuff, there's a lot of places you can hide.
Sure.
But if all of a sudden you turn a guy in for theft and he gets charged and convicted, everyone's going to know where it was at. So we debated what to do, and ultimately we decided that it's the right thing to do. Not necessarily for us, because we got our antlers back. You know, we got our antlers back, and we could have just let it go. But the scary thing to us is what's going to happen next time. You know, next generation. My kids do it, for example. You know, someone else does it in 50 years.
Right. Or next year.
Or next year, yeah. These ranchers have proven to be emboldened enough to do some drastic criminal level stuff, and we thought the best way to deter future behavior was to turn them in.
All right. So a couple of questions, David. So one, I'm assuming that you had tagged the elk.
Yeah.
And then next question. So it was the game warden that you called, right?
Yes, we called the game warden first. Yeah, and then the game warden, he was mystified at the story we were telling him. And so he said, if you can, please come meet me when you guys get out. So first thing we did was we went and met with the game warden and told him the story, showed him the video, and the video evidence was crucial.
Right.
The video and the photos, that was critical, because we got the confession on tape. But yeah, they turned it over to local law enforcement, and a few months later, the guy was charged with misdemeanor theft.
Wow. All right. So, I mean, that's an incredible story. And Ken, if you could show this article, go ahead and put this on the screen. There's one of the articles you wrote about this. This one I think is in Peterson's Hunting.
Yes.
Was that the elk that you shot?
That is the elk that I shot. Correct.
Okay. But it's an interesting article because I mean you pretty much lay out exactly what you just told us. But I'll go ahead and put. Let's see here. I'll go ahead and post a link to this one so that you can read it. So let's talk about kind of some more general, public lands questions. Sure. I think that's definitely going to be a huge issue in this election. So you contacted the state and the BLM and
the Fish and Game,
everybody,
local law enforcement, every single person. Well, yeah, this is my job, and if I was going to get in trouble for something, I could legit lose my job, and I didn't want to do anything illegal. I mean, when you're doing something like this, which is admittedly very aggressive. This is
I would say so.
According to my friend Andrew McKean, who's on this hunt, he said it's a very aggressive tactic, and I think that's fair to say. But at the same time, it is the only tactic. So I called everyone, and I spent hours upon hours doing all the diligent research to make sure that what we were doing was legal, and it was.
All right. So before you came in, Ken, or before we started the show, Ken and I were kind of talking about this. So. Was there a question of airspace? And I know this sounds kind of like an odd question to maybe some of our viewers, but if you own a piece of property, I mean, there's a certain amount of airspace that you own above it. Think about a skyscraper in New York City, Trump Tower, for example, right? Trump buys a chunk of property and he says, I'm going to build this tower. Well, in New York City, airspace, very valuable, right? So you have to be able to own and build upwards. And so to some degree, even if you still own some of the airspace above your house, was that ever a question? I mean, how high did you have to fly?
I think that's a great question, and I don't believe there's any concrete answer to what airspace people own above their property. And I think this corner crossing stuff going on right now is a great indication of that. Some people would argue that you don't own any airspace. Other people would say that you do own infinite airspace, which obviously isn't the case because commercial air travel or private air travel, that wouldn't exist if everyone owned their airspace from here to the moon. It just doesn't work that way. But yeah, that never came up in anything. I know the FAA has strict rules about if you're flying over a dwelling or any kind of structures. I think don't quote me on this one. I'm not a aviation guy, but I think it's something like 500 feet or 1,000 feet above structures. And all the structures we've gone over, I'm certain we've been over 500 feet. Now, there is argument to be made that if there's a small piece of land and there's structures all around it, you're probably going to come within that 500
Sure.
feet threshold. And is that illegal? I would argue that probably isn't. If you're doing it for transportation purposes and you have to land on this piece, well, I don't know what you can do there. But at this point, that has not been an issue.
So the reason I asked the question is, obviously you had to cross in the air,
Yeah.
cross private land to get there.
Yes.
And so, if a landowner owns the airspace above their property, well then, I mean, I guess theoretically that you could trespass if indeed somebody owns the air above their property. But I think this is an area of the law that I don't know that we've
No. You make a great point.
About.
You make a great point. And no one, like I said, no one has any concrete evidence on this one. I don't know of any cases where anyone's been able to prove that they have ownership and this pilot or a pilot is guilty of trespassing. But now that you mention it, I'm going to reach out to United because they fly over my house daily, and I'm going to try to get some money from them.
Yeah, there's a couple flights every day that come in to Sheridan. All right. So did this rancher have any livestock?
Yes.
This? Okay.
Yes.
How close were they?
Now, in the November hunt in particular, there was no livestock in the rangeland that we were hunting. They were all down low. They were penned up, and they were probably doing some shipping stuff. And I know they're down below because we could look and see them, and we could hear them constantly. And they were loud. But yeah, that is a good topic, because if people are going to be flying in, which they're going to do, it's only going to get more common.
Right.
There will be disturbances of animals, just like there's disturbances if you take a semi truck, down a highway and there's a herd of elk nearby. They're gonna spook.
Right.
That is inevitable. And is it right? No. Is it wrong? I would say no. It's inevitable. It's just the cost of doing business when you cannot access our public lands any other way besides air. You've got to go in that way.
But I think that there's a couple of considerations that we might be glossing over here. So one of the problems with livestock is they move. And so if you've leased a chunk of federal property and you do have livestock out there, how am I to determine where my cows are versus where your helicopter is landing? And you fly a helicopter over a herd of cows. I mean, they're going to go everywhere. So how do we know that? Like, how could you prove that your helicopter isn't harassing this guy's cows?
I don't think you can prove it one way or the other. But it's important to note that these people do not lease the land itself. They lease the grazing rights to the land.
Right.
That's
But the cows are their property, right?
Oh, sure, certainly. Yeah. And a lot of the stuff there is their property. Mm-hmm.
And I think a secondary question too is, we're the three of us sitting here. We're all sportsmen, and I don't think that any of us would, intentionally, violate fish and game laws to go shoot an elk. Well, one of those that we have, and this is a big one, man. If you're caught hurting wildlife, that's a big problem.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know a guy in Buffalo that he lost his hunting privileges for 5 years, and they fined him several $1,000s.
Yeah.
I mean, he actually was hurting.
Oh,
elk.
certainly. Yeah. He was trying to keep the animals on his property.
Yeah. Well, actually, this guy was an outfitter, the one I'm thinking of. But yeah, what had happened is he knew where the elk were, and so he drove around the other side and tried to push the elk towards his hunters. Okay. Definitely illegal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But what I'm asking is, I don't think any one of us would intentionally, cheat to get to shoot an elk.
Depends on how big he is.
Maybe Ken would, but I don't think that we would hop in a helicopter and go herd wildlife. But the question is, how do you prove that you're not?
I would say that you don't have to prove that you're not.
Okay.
The beauty of what we're doing is it is very open-ended in the fact that it's aerial transportation. So we're flying from a public road to a public road. And have we had instances where there's been cattle on the road we wanted to land? No, that hasn't been the case yet. If that was the case and there was an area nearby we could land, we certainly would do that. There's no goal to harass the animals. Just like, you mentioned earlier, it's their property. Well, it is their property, and we're not trying to spook them. But if we're on public land as well, and a cow, destroys our tent, does that open up liability to the rancher because his property damaged our property?
Well, I can tell you this. Now, I don't know about public land, but I know even though we have a fence outlaw in Wyoming, which I've always thought I think it's kind of absurd. Sorry, Chip, I know you're going to be mad at that one. But anyway, if my neighbor's cows get into our property, which it happens every once in a while at the cabin, I mean, it's always a huge mess. Sometimes fences are damaged. My mom's flowers are trampled. But that landowner, the guy that owns the livestock, technically, yeah.
It's on him.
It's on him.
Because it's your private land.
Right. And I think the other point that I would bring up, and it's fortunate we have a legislator sitting right here, that we don't pass laws for the people that follow the law. We pass laws for the individuals that are going to break the law. And so even though the three of us sitting here, I would hope are ethical hunters and, would try to follow the law and, conduct an ethical hunt. We don't pass those laws for the three of us, even though we follow them. We pass laws for people who would herd antelope, who would, go chase a herd of elk towards their buddies. And so I guess my question is, even though you guys conducted your hunt ethically, what's to prevent the next guy from, hey, we got a helicopter and there's a herd of elk over here. Let's herd them towards our guys. I mean, how do you prevent that? We don't know, right?
Yeah, that's something. I mean, you could easily prevent it. If there's a rancher out there, a ranch hand, and they see a helicopter that's moving a herd of elk, you can bet your bottom they're going to pull out their phone and record that.
Sure.
And the tail number is going to be obvious. And I can't imagine there's a pilot that has gone through the years of necessary documentation and permitting to be licensed by the FAA to haul people around that would be foolish enough to do that. But there are probably some private landowners that would do foolish things.
Big
like
stack
that.
of hundreds goes a long way.
Yeah.
So I need to take a break. Can you hold over the break
Sure,
and we'll
yeah.
continue this conversation? So let's take a break and we'll be back in a minute. Maybe. There we go.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com.
Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, doing what I was born to do, with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the show.
Would you take a second and define illustrious?
I don't want to. I don't have to. It's my
That's
show.
what I thought.
Yeah, whatever. Well, welcome back to the program, my friends. We're talking a little hunting, fishing, game, helicoptering into public land to go hunting. I think it's an interesting topic. And we're joined by David Faubion, right? Got it right. I got it right. I'm so proud.
It's a tough last name to pronounce.
It is. It is. Well, David works for Guns and Ammo magazine, and writes for a couple of different other outfits. Well, if you remember the story about the guy who helicoptered into a piece of public land, shot an elk, the elk got stolen, this is the guy. And so where I'd like to take the conversation now is kind of more game and fish laws more generally. Now, if you want to stir up a controversy in the Wyoming legislature, just mention preference points or hunting regulations or fences is another good one. But a hot topic right now is corner crossing. And I'm really kind of up in the air on it. And I think it's a much more complicated subject. But where are you at with corner crossing? You think it's legal? You think we ought to do it?
I would say based on the legal ruling from the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, as of this point, corner crossing is legal in the 6 states that the 10th Circuit represents. Now, I know there's a challenge in Montana, and there's going to be a legal case there, which will be interesting because that's a different circuit court, and they could rule differently. But I've done a little bit of research on this. I've never corner crossed myself.
Okay.
I know the basics of it, and when it comes right down to it, it is in my mind at least, it is not any different than flying into a piece of public ground. The only difference
principle seems to be the same.
The principle really is the same. You're not setting foot on private land. You're traveling through private airspace. And in the case of corner crossing, you've got 4 corners that touch, and there's private and public airspace. Half of it is private, half of it's public. And based on the ruling last year from the 10th Circuit, it appears that they do not consider that trespassing. But this is certainly a much bigger issue in that one decision, because it goes all the way back to the Unlawful Enclosures Act in the 1800s.
Right. Well, I think there's one important difference too, that when you're on the ground, it's very difficult to figure out where you are exactly. Now, a lot of people have the hunting app and would swear by it. A friend of my dad's, I cannot convince him that thing is not 100% accurate. But the truth is, if you have a handheld GPS or your phone or whatever device you're using, that it's accurate maybe to a meter, maybe, that it is impossible for you to find out exactly where you are. And so even though you may have a corner post, and there may be 4 corners there, you don't precisely know where you're standing.
Yeah.
And so the question of trespassing does come up.
Sure. I think what I've been told is the only way to know for sure is to have that corner pin located there. And if the corner pin is directly under the fence, then you know that this is a property boundary.
Well, you know where the boundary is.
Yes.
My point is that if you have, and I don't know quite how to illustrate it, but if you have the corner pin and there's four corners right there, you don't know which chunk of property you're standing on, because you have to be that precise.
You have to be that precise, and I know that a lot of people rely on fence lines.
Yes,
which aren't
fence
accurate.
lines do not follow property lines most of the time. And so if you have a GPS capacity that's within 10 meters, you can't rely on the fences. Good luck trying to find those pins. That makes it tough. And I guess one of the big questions for me that I would throw out there for discussion is who gets to be the arbiter? You end up with someone like a game warden who has probably no better technology than you have.
Not unless he's a surveyor, too.
And he pretty much is put in the position of being judge, jury, and everything right there on the spot. And There are so many conflicts of rights and responsibilities that come into play here that it's really easy to step on a landmine.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think the rights is a given. Private property rights exist for good reason.
Yes.
And there's no.
Our country was built on it.
Yes, there's no rhyme or reason that someone should willfully trespass. I think it comes down to, in my mind at least, the intent. Okay, so
so that's a good point, because in our trespass laws, like, intent is a big issue.
It is a big one. And I, again, never having corner crossed myself, I look at it from two different sides. There's the people that are trying to access their own public land and doing everything possible not to trespass. That is their intent. They're in good faith trying to avoid stepping on private ground. And you bring up great points, both of you. How do you know for sure if you've done that? I don't think you do. Now the other side of the equation is the intent of the landowners. What's their purpose? What's their goal in this whole thing?
No, I would say at a fundamental level is to protect their property.
Well, yes, I would say that could be. I would say that by and large, most of their intent is to keep people off of public land, which they want to have sole access to.
I don't know. I don't
You
know
don't think so?
if I agree with you
Okay.
on that. Like being a landowner, we're not the landowners that is going to open fire. There probably are some. However, that's our property.
Sure.
And it's, as Americans, well, as human beings, you have the right to own and maintain your public property, whether it's an inch or a mile. And nobody else has a right to even step 1 foot on your property.
It's true.
If you don't want them there.
Yes.
And and again, to argue that, well, I can step on your property because I'm accessing public land, whether intentionally or not. I don't know that I buy that argument.
No one does.
I mean, I really don't think that's a valid one in my mind.
What convinced me of the ultimate motives of this is when the wealthy landowner in the Iron Bar Holdings case, when he sued them civilly for damages of crossing through his airspace because he devalued his land holdings, which the only reason he could make that claim is because all of a sudden he didn't have sole access to this public land. That right there is why he sued.
Maybe that guy.
I don't think he did it to prevent his own property rights. He did it to ensure that his fiefdom remained as intact as possible.
So I think I'd probably draw a bright line in between. Yes, there are landowners that they've leased this piece of ground for 100 years in their family, and they probably consider it their own. I don't think that that's the majority of landowners. However, I do think, though, that if there is a chunk of private property that surrounds it, that nobody has a right to cross that. That's my property.
Absolutely.
Now we can make a law that says somehow, maybe Ken, you can weigh in on this, that you can charge a reasonable fee if there's no other access. But I think this is a really super complicated situation.
Who gets to determine what reasonable is? I've known a lot of ranchers. I grew up here. I've known a lot of ranchers who have had landlocked property that there is a sense of ownership that develops over that. There's also some arguments that, well, I'm the one that sprayed it for weeds, maintained it, part of his lease, other factors there. There are good landowners, there are bad landowners, there are good hunters, there are bad hunters. And that's really what it comes down to, is a matter of respect. Do you respect the rights of others? And are you willing to, how far are you willing to go?
Well, and so I think that we glossed over one of the points that you made, like the big corner crossing case. The guy sued for damages.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, damages to his airspace. And for most people, I think they would probably say, well, what damage does it do if I walk across your property, right? It's just, I'm not driving. I don't have a four-wheeler. I'm just walking. Well, this is an interesting place, and I think I mentioned this to you yesterday, that, okay, maybe you're only bending over a couple of blades of grass. Well, it never ends there. And so if if we can cross over this piece of property, then what started out as hop up on top of this fence post and jump across, that turns into a ladder. And then the ladder turns into a gate. And then the little trail to get to this, well, it doesn't stay a trail very long. It turns into a 2-track. And then it turns into, because the 2-track gets bumpy and we've exposed all the rocks, the 2-track turns into a 4-lane highway because nobody wants to drive over the rocks. And so I think that there's a huge potential for quite a lot of damage to somebody's property. And we do pass laws to prevent the potential of damaging your property. That's why we have laws against robbery.
Yeah. I did some research on this after we discussed it in the past. And there was a significant case that the Supreme Court heard in 1979.
Okay.
It was Leo Sheep Company versus the United States government. And I believe in the early 70s, Leo Sheep Company, which had a bunch of the private land holdings down in the checkerboarded stuff near the railways, the government came in and they wanted access for the public to get to a reservoir. And due to the checkerboarded stuff, they couldn't take any vehicles in. So I don't know if corner crossing was a thing back then, but the BLM in their infinite wisdom, they took a bulldozer and they made a road through Leo Sheep Company's property.
Oh crap.
And the argument that they made was it was implied consent that the public would be able to access these lands in perpetuity. Well, they took that all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled. They said no, there is no implied consent. And so they deemed that what the government had done was illegal, and Leo Sheep Company won. So am I saying that people won't abuse it? No, clearly people will abuse it. They're very good at doing that. No matter what we're talking about, people will abuse stuff. But I find it hard to believe that a corner crossing incident where you're going through airspace will result in a road.
I mean, I think I realize that we're talking about real extenuating circumstances, but out of all the times I've sat in the gallery in the legislature, you would not believe the crazy extenuating circumstances that get brought up on that floor, and for good reason too. That if there's one little loophole in the law, it will get exploited, and I think that this whole checkerboarded pattern of property that we have, I mean, it is a much more complicated issue than just saying, okay, you can corner cross. I don't think that solves the issue, because you still have the 25,000 acres out in the middle of the guy's ranch.
Yeah. That'd be one heck of a corner cross.
Oh man.
Right? Be a big ladder.
And I really think the only way to solve this is to do, and I don't even know how you do this, but to have like large scale land swaps. All right, so there's this chunk of property out here. Let's swap it so that your property is contiguous.
Yeah. And a lot of that does happen.
It does.
Yeah, but it's this is one of those that, man, I think it's not going to stop here. Let me ask you a different question. One of the big issues, and maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't, but there's a political action committee that started, and they're calling themselves Protect Wyoming. Spending a lot of money. Interestingly enough, it's run by a Bernie Sanders supporter. That was fun when we found that out. And the audio that we got from inside his meeting was even more fun. But they're clearly not fully in support of multiple use on public lands. Well, you're a sportsman.
Yes.
So what do you think about multiple use? We've got public lands. Should we be able to use them with oil and gas and hunting and all of that? And if so, how do we protect the rights of sportsmen?
Yeah, I think that is the hallmark of public land. It is managed for multiple uses, and that's to me the beauty of the whole thing. So a rancher with their cattle, grazing the grass, has just as much rights as a hunter like me going in once a year for a dream trip, and they have just as much rights as the oil and gas extraction people that go in there. It really is an interesting thing, and to see the jockeying for resources that occurs and the friction that undoubtedly occurs between all these is it really is fascinating to me. Now, I don't know much about the group that you mentioned.
Yeah, well, they're fascinating. We've written a couple of articles on them.
Yeah, I need to do more research when time allows. But yeah, I've always heard that the one knock on the conservatives, the Republicans, is their predisposition to sell off public lands, and that as far as the people I've talked to, that is a losing issue, because most of the people they don't have access to landlocked private land. They don't abut checkerboarded lands, and so to them, you know, I think the public lands that our nation has is one of our greatest treasures, and they see it as just a simple way to get that back into private hands.
See, and I would, and the only thing that I can speak to is Mike Lee's proposal. That thing got so contorted into something that it never was. The truth is, with that proposal, there were so many restrictions to it. Like it never had anything to do with BLM up in the Bighorn Mountains. It never had anything to do with the Cloud Peak Wilderness. Nothing. Okay, so it was restricted to land that was contiguous to a 10,000 person town. Now there's not that many towns in Wyoming that have 10,000 people, and so really, the public land that they were talking about swapping or selling had to be right around the border of an existing community with infrastructure to it, you know, water, sewer, roads, those sorts of things. But so it got perverted into something that it wasn't. But it was a loser of an issue, a bad one.
Yeah, I was going to say, here in Wyoming, the most recent one that I can think of is the Kelly parcel.
Yeah, I didn't like that one either.
And I was adamantly opposed to that, which would kind of offer an alternative to your presupposition.
Ken, could you give us the Cliff Notes version of what that is? It's been a while.
I probably would misspeak myself with details. You know how I am about details after more than about 10 minutes. But basically, there's a parcel of land up there in the Teton area. Public land, beautiful, absolutely priceless. And yet there is in Wyoming law the idea that we're supposed to use all state lands to the best economical value. And some people said, hey, if we sold this, we could make this kind of money. To me, some things are not for sale. Some things are worth more than money, and all those other arguments that may be a little bit esoteric. But I don't think... I was shocked at some of the people who wanted to
sell it.
Yeah, and the arguments that they used, and I was appalled. It's not like Wyoming needs the money.
You're right.
You know, so for my part, the only thing I can say is I am very interested in taking money out of federal hands and putting it into state hands, because the state bureaucrats are much more approachable, and we can do something about them. What the feds have done with so many different things, what they tried to do with BLM land, et cetera, there's almost nothing we can do here.
So let me ask you this, David. So if we could swap federal land if we could take over federal land and manage it at the state level, would you be in favor of that?
By and large, no.
Okay, why?
Because it'd be easier for the state to get rid of it.
Okay.
They do a land swap with their buddy, and the buddy would get incredible public land and would give over, you know, nasty rangeland that's near a highway.
So,
and that's just, we all know that's what predominantly has occurred.
It has happened somewhere over by Devil's Tower. I can think of one very specific incidents of exactly that. And what should have happened is the people should have risen up and made an example of that situation. That didn't happen, and that's a problem with it. But the feds do the same things too.
Yeah.
The worst thing about the federal government is the gigantic bureaucratic headache to do anything. Just to make an order for pencils, requires $10,000 in studies, right? Well, when it comes to public lands, in my mind, that's a good thing, because it prevents any knee-jerk reaction to getting rid of X parcel, trading it for.
The bad side of that, of course, is who's making these decisions. These are people that have never even seen this country. They have no idea how we live.
True.
And
they're back there making decisions on how we should live.
And I think that the one of those land swaps that I think is a perfect example, perhaps, of what you're talking about is right above Buffalo on the face of the mountain. So there was a big land swap, and it was prime hunting ground. I mean, there was almost always, a giant buck in there, and in some cases elk. Well, there's a land swap, and then the grazing lease was sold, And I guess it was 2 years ago. My dad told me he went up there looking for a deer, and there wasn't any grass up there because it had been grazed, and there wasn't an animal within a mile of that place. And so, I mean, I think that there are positives and negatives to a lot of this. And while that was at one time private land, and then it got swapped, and then it became public, swapping it for public land, that didn't really do it any justice.
Yeah.
In fact, it hurt it a lot.
Yeah, and people often ask me, because landlocked public land is an issue that I found myself surrounded by. But they always ask me, do you think there should be public easements to every chunk of public land? And that's an easy solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's our land, we need to own it. And I'm not necessarily in favor of that. Even though I know I get it, on the surface, it's great for the American citizens because they don't have to go to great lengths to get a helicopter or a fixed wing aircraft to fly into it. But at the same time, I know exactly what happens when there's easy access for people.
Yeah.
The game animals are either hunted out or they're pushed onto private land. I get that. And you also have the other issue of, say you have a 25,000 acre chunk, and instead of one surrounding landowner, say you got a dozen. Like, whose property gets the easement through it? It's not so simple.
And look at the southwest part of the state where the checkerboard goes on. Now what are you going to do?
Oh.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, and that was the biggest issue. Well, one of the big issues with that Rock Springs RMP, that you have private landowners that really were surrounded by public land, and the BLM said, "I'm sorry, no more access." And so this guy that owns, his dream property, now he can't access it.
Wow.
Right. So the whole problem is reversed. But I think this is a much more complicated issue, and I'm glad that you took the time to sit down and visit with us. Yeah, Ken.
I just wanted to point out our friend Patrick offers this. I'll throw it up there with the earlier discussion.
So Patrick says the FAA has exclusive sovereignty over navigable, I always have trouble with that word, airspace, 500 feet above ground level in uncongested areas and 1,000 above congested areas, and 2,000 feet horizontally from obstacles. So there's an answer to our question about airspace. Well, David, if people want to read your writing or get up with you, how do they do that?
My company that I work for is Outdoor Sportsman Group. We have a bunch of different gun magazines, hunting titles, Guns and Ammo Mag online, Shooting Times magazine's another one. Peterson's Hunting Magazine's our biggest hunting title. But we've got all sorts of stuff for every type of outdoor pursuit.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And we'll be back tomorrow. We've got Jimmy Skovgaard. That ought to be an interesting interview, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is